First of all, to start, in my opinion, I think this conversation is long overdue. Grassroots organizations such as the Voices Community and many others I know have been doing lots of work in the community, but their work has gone unnoticed. It has gone not noticed. And more so, the big problem has been that the international donors and NGOs have taken long to shift their thinking on the kind of contribution local organizations have. As Ruth mentioned, there's a lot that came out in the COVID time, so I'll bring a bit of perspective on that as a local organization. But in respect to the question, specifically on the approaches that I think or our organization think are the right way to better do localization of aid, I think we need to have direct funding from donors. Community-based organizations or grassroots organizations have now acquainted themselves with all the systems needed, for example, to receive money or receive funding. But some funding opportunities are set out to cut out these CBOs because they are essentially for NGOs, whereas some of these organizations are just a CBO. So it needs to be a bit more of all these organizations are equal partners. I think, but funding, I mean, like NGOs have traditionally have access to major funding, and they oversee on behalf of communities and beneficiaries. But in my opinion, grassroots organizations are the first responders, and they should be empowered with funds given to the organization, can give direct outcome. For example, during COVID, we've seen an organization like mine, the Voices Community, came out to fundraise for money, and we got around $1,500, and we support the community with food, with PPEs, and that tells you how much we were there to support these initiatives, to support our community. So it's very important that a grassroots organization like ours, like Voices, are supported. In Kibera, I know there is an organization called Art 360 that used murals to give information on COVID, and that continuously helped to bridge the gap in terms of information, and I think that's the way we need. So local organizations should be given that chance and be given that table in terms of accessing to funding easier. I think in respect to this also means that it's easier for them to see an outcome from that easier, because an organization like YVC or Art 360 or any others in the community, they are the first responders. They know the issues that the communities have, and I think in that respect they need to be empowered more to actually support the communities better. The other part, I think we also need to promote acceptability and recognition of grassroots organization. More often than not, development actors, due to lack of, for example, grassroots perspective, don't understand the significance of grassroots organization. And many times they are perceived as mobilizers or just people who should be part of certain benefits. I think, in my opinion, this traditional way of believing that local organizations should just be supporting in mobilization need to change. We have to challenge that thinking. We have to challenge that perspective because local organizations are doing a lot. Some are supporting in trainings, some are supporting in food access, some are supporting in different, like we have women-led organizations supporting women to open, for example, savings group. I think it's very imperative that their voices and they are recognized as equal partners, because that's the only way we'll support each other in this humanitarian crisis. Thank you.
I just want to direct this question to Ishimwe. You working with currently you are working with the different NGO, you are a local organization. How have you been able to build and develop trust among with the partners that you are currently working?
Thank you so much for your question. I think the question is rightly placed in this conversation because it's about localization, and much of the conversation usually is how much trust we have with this local organization. But I want to say two things about that. One, when you're talking about local organizations, sometimes we think it's organizations that are started yesterday or 2 months ago or a year ago. We have local organizations that have been there for more than 6 years. So they've been there, they've seen the strategies of how NGOs work, and they've tried to implement that and put system in place, whether it's financial systems or different administration systems, they've put that. So, and they've been able to access different small fundings, which they're able to continue their work. But in respect to our work, I think as YVC, we have tried very much to be able to be a straightforward organization where when funding comes, it directly goes to the work that's supposed to be done. And this revolves also actually having better accountability, that you can prove that this money was spent on this. So with the partnership we've had with, for example, Cohere, it's been more of that very transparent and honest way of seeing this is where the funding was, this is the funding that was brought, and this is the match that was used. But I think one of the things that also Leah brought out is the effect to sort of like this small funding that we get. You know, you have funding that doesn't come and cater for good, like a very competent person to be part of the organization. So you end up paying someone who's very qualified, something like 15,000 or 10,000, and they're demotivated. They can't feel that they're doing much into this organization. So I think with respect to Trocare or any other INGO, I think there's much of that change into subgrantee to more of us RLOs or a refugee-led organization or community-based organization being actually equal partners, meaning that we can be a part of a big project and see it through to its realization. So that's how I think I'd want, and I think with the capacity strengthening we've been getting from Cohere and a few other organizations has given us that like a wider thought of what it means to actually retain donors, because when there's no proper accountability, when there's no proper relation, then you cannot retain your donors. You need to be able to retain them. And that can only come when they're able to get the trust. So I think that's, in general, what I would say. But also, sometimes it's also coming together and believing that you can do things together. So we often think that we want to just get the funding, but there's much more that we can get out of a partnership. It would mean that actually involving in other mentorship project or access to certain resources that then can give us that perspective of being part of this. But I think trust is something that is built and can only be built when you are able to give someone something and see into how that funding was used. But when there's nothing coming for them, then you cannot trust on what? What would you trust on? You're not giving anything. So let's embrace more of that sort of support. Let's also not see those as really problems, but also areas to see how we can change that. I love what Michael talked about, evidence, research on the impact of localization, on the importance of localization. I think through that, then you're able to see this work, this didn't work, and we're able to improve on those areas. But continuously means accountability has made us be trustworthy with the organization we've been dealing with, supporting the works that, or the ideas and principles with the partnerships, and also retaining that trust with the donors. I think that has been much of what we've acquainted ourselves with, and also learning a lot with what it means to actually run an organization. I really felt like I wanted to add my voice onto about the last point on the key priorities I think we should move forward in terms of localization and leadership. And I will not take much time just to echo what everyone is saying. I mean, during COVID, we have seen international organizations closed down, but local organizations were there to continuously respond to the issues in the community. So that tells you how much significant they are in the community. But in essence, to tell us the best approaches I think we need to do, because there's quite a lot that local organizations face in terms of even sustainability. A lot of time they have to spend even their own pocket money to be able to run activity, because they have passion for their community. They know their communities. They're the first responders. They want to see change in their communities. And great philosopher James Baldwin once said that not everything that is faced that can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. As I've said, this conversation is already long overdue, but the fact that we are here now, we're already facing this issue and we want to see the change. So I don't know, but organizations here, INGO, I think they should find a way to support better local organizations by, for example, in meaningful participation, like organization committing certain funding in their budgeting to support certain organizations. The community could be not so many, but couple of organizations, if 100 organizations in NGOs put specific funding to support community-based organization, you can imagine how much support will be going to local organization and ease the humanitarian work. Lastly, I think we need to strengthen, to have strengthening learning and capacity building. I don't think it's always about money. I think funds, it's part of the intervention which we really need, but more often it's about the impact we want as local organization most of the time. As Ruth said, much of the time for NGOs, they are coming to implement, but we are in the locals, at the local level, we are the experts. We know best what goes into our community. So I think what we should do is that we need to promote better, and I think an activity like this or event like this promotes that, having more meetings of exchanging best practices, making certain commitments, like for example the suggestion I just gave, in effort to empower local organization, because we understand that this is the right time to do that. The crises are many. We've seen as Ukraine, nobody knew that would have happened that quickly, but it happened. So to better respond to these issues that we face as locals, I think that togetherness in supporting each other, capacitating us also to the fact that NGOs have the best experience on how to deal with donors. They know how best to do that. I love the suggestion of, I don't know, it was Ruth, about even investing in a funding, a fundraising officer in our local organization. That means that we will continuously have funds for our organization. But I think we have seen that local organizations are doing great into the community. It's just that actionable way or approach we need to move forward with. We have to see ourselves being part of this. You never know tomorrow. And supporting local organization or localization is the right thing to do, and it's supposed to be done now. Thanks.
One, localization indeed has always been discussed. And one of the things that we need to bear in mind, no matter what we do, no matter what we say, charities will always be there. Some of the oldest charities in the world are 400 years old, and they're still going on. Their need to support people will always be there, and it is happening even in developed countries. I have, of course, a first-hand experience, as some of you may know, around that. But the whole area of what I would call funding intermediation will always be there. Will always be there. None of us can walk into Ireland or in the UK, USA, or any other country that where we have a lot of philanthropic work and start asking for money. I can assure you, you will not get it. You won't get it. And so we have to be very, very clear that the issue of intermediation and the role of NGOs will always be there. And it is a process. It is progressive, and it's something that we need to manage. And of course, when I talk about managing, I'm talking about managing in a way that is respectful and of course promoting the transfer of knowledge and information to the South. Number two, we have the issue of accountability structures. And I talk so with authority as an auditor in this country, specialized in nonprofits. Many of you know that accountability structures are weak. And not just weak, very weak in many local organizations. And nobody will want to give money where you are not sure whether what you'll get from that particular beneficiary is useful and can support you are raising money from your own constituency back home. So that is very important, and it goes back to emphasize the need for real training, as my fellow facilitator just mentioned a few moments ago, and of course Michael, the group from Trocare. And of course, when we come to budgeting, you also have other issues there, like the report that was given on the day that we were having the launching of the NGO week can be very, very misleading, that over 50% of monies received goes to administration. And what I have found over and over again in auditing INGOs, NGOs, CBOs, and so on, is that many times it is the misallocation of resources, not in fraud, but in terms of how you call it. How you call it when you are reporting is the problem. Like, for example, you find salaries is all in there, but some of those salaries actually directly supported the work at grassroots level. And that is an accounting problem. It is not a problem of dishonesty. And of course, once we all come on board on how proper non-profit accounting should be done and managed, those statistics that were read to us on Monday will change. I really hope the minister did not go away with the wrong end of the stick, that NGOs and INGOs and every other charity spend more money, people just sitting in the office and earning a salary and nothing is going down, because that is absolutely incorrect. And of course, the minister and I go a long way. He knows that that can in fact change the geography and the chemistry of the figures that get reported. So that is an area where training is required, and of course I throw the challenge to Trocare. You are leading in that area is something that you need to look at. You had started it many years ago when I was your auditor, but maybe something got lost in the middle there. Then we have the issue of staying afloat during times of disruptions. COVID-19 has taught us one thing. Even if an ING wanted to respond to some issue in the South, COVID has taught us that, one, you will not get a flight to Africa. Two, you will not be able to move, even if you wanted to move. Three, your government may not even allow you to leave your country. And three, even if you arrived, you might still be somewhere for 14 days or more, being quarantined. But the local person will be moving around. The banking system will still be working and money can be transferred. What am I trying to say? Let us help local organizations to be stronger, such that in times of crisis, when nobody can come from any part of the world to come and implement here, the local organization will still be able to receive. Even we as auditors, we have been taught that you can actually audit without having to travel all the way to Mombasa or some other part of the country to do the work. So we have learned a lot from COVID-19. I believe there will be new lessons to be learned. We are not out of the woods yet to be able to kind of pat ourselves on the back. We are not there. But the learning which has come out is great, and I would urge all of us to embrace the idea and what we have just discussed about strengthening of local organizations. And let's face it also, there are statistics to prove that in local organizations, staff tend to move every 3 years, and it therefore means that for entities that are in the space of training, there is work for you, because it needs to be a continuous process. And that, again, will aid local organizations, will aid INGOs, will aid donors, because every donor wants success. Every donor wants success, not failure. And I would like to leave you with those thoughts so that as we continue with this process, you can continue the conversation. Keep it hot. It is not just for this session here. Keep it alive, because this country is ours, and it is you and me to do all we can to make sure that Kenya is a better nation. Thank you so much.